How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Nun Ches, Daf 58 of Masechta BavaKama. Friends, friends. Today's daf I think should be pretty quick. Actually, I think it's like not super hard. I don't think. I'm recording in the morning again, so I got coffee. It's very nice. Okay. Let's do it. Alright, I'm going to start on Daf Nun Zayin Beis. Hopefully, alright, okay, good. Daf Nun Zayin Beis. Interesting. Okay, interesting idea. Daf Nun Zayin Beis. By the two dots, about 5-10 lines from the bottom. Nofel Legino Venenis Mishalemis Mashanenis Ho. So if a sheep falls into somebody else's garden and it eats stuff, so it pays based on the benefit, not based on the damage, right? So let's say it eats some really expensive stuff. You don't have to pay back the really expensive stuff. You just got to pay the value of a meal, right? Of a cheap meal. Omar Rav says, Rav benech bito aval ochla afilu mashenenis einem shalemes. So Rav says that what you have to pay for is benech bito. But now what it ate? What does that mean? It means that the sheep falls onto the field, and then when it falls, it lands on some, stalks of something, and the stalks break the fall, right? So instead of falling smack on the ground and getting hurt, so the stalks that it falls on serves as like a cushion of sorts to break the fall, but they're casual, they get smushed into the ground and they get ruined. So that is what the owner of the sheep is responsible to pay for. But if after it picks itself up, it starts eating things, he doesn't need to pay for that. Again, Amrav says, what the owner of the sheep has to pay for is the stuff that gets squashed into the ground when it was breaking the fall. Aval, ochlo, but if the sheep then stood up and started eating away, afilu ma shenenes enim shalemes, the owner of the sheep does not need to pay for that. Let's say that Rav is consistent with his position, which is the Rav says, Rav hoyolo shelo tochal. Right, there was a scenario where you have a guy who brings his fruits into somebody else's. I think his name was Fruit Boy. I think Fruit Boy brought his fruits into Balabay's boy's chotzer. You remember this scenario? So Fruit Boy brings his fruits into Balabay's boy's chotzer without permission, and he leaves his fruit there, and then Balabay's boy's animal eats the fruits and gets a tummy ache and dies. So Fruit Boy says, leave me alone, I'm not paying for your animal, you shouldn't have eaten it. So we see that Rav has this position where it's a valid claim to say that, well, the animal shouldn't have eaten it. So interestingly, and the Gemara is going to push back on this, but interestingly, we want to say here, from the fact that Rav is saying that the owner of the sheep does not need to pay for what the sheep ate, you could kind of frame it in that same argument. Again, we're going to push back on it because it's a little bit of funny logic, but you could say, well, my sheep shouldn't have eaten it. It shouldn't have eaten the fruit. What do you want me to do? It shouldn't have eaten it. Don't blame me. Meaning, it's weird because it should be punkt fakert. It should say, yeah, exactly, it shouldn't have eaten it, therefore you're responsible, because why did it eat it? It shouldn't have eaten it, and it did, you're chayav. Anyways, fine. So let's say Rav Latame, that Rav is consistent with his approach, which is the Amar Rav, haylosh lo tochal. It shouldn't have eaten it. Amre, so they say, 1 second. I'll say that when Rav says it shouldn't have eaten it, havalo shelo tochal heicha de itzika he, that I will say shaloi toichal, that shouldn't have eaten it, where the animal itself got damaged. That Fruit Boy could make the argument, lo mishalam, no, I'm not paying. Your animal ate my fruits and got a tummy ache and died. Well, it's its own fault. It shouldn't have eaten it in the first place. I'm not paying for that. But in this case, where the sheep is causing damage to others, diptire lishalume, where the owner of the sheep is now trying to exempt himself from having to pay and to shy away from responsibility? Mi'omer, would he be able to say, it shouldn't have eaten it, I'm not paying, it's not my fault, it shouldn't have eaten it. Silly sheep. No, if he shouldn't have eaten it, Dafka, he should be responsible to therefore pay for it because because the animal misbehaved. Excuse me, coffee. Ella. Right, so the B'tira the Shalom Mi'omer, so Ella, lo miboya come, no, it's verkehrt. Lo miboya achla, the Mishalem is mashenenis. Okay, certainly if the sheep eats stuff, so the owner of the sheep is going to have to pay for the benefit that it received. Aval nechbita, but if it broke its fall on these stalks and they got squashed into the ground, ema, so I may make the argument, look, the person whose field got damaged is basically the equivalent of Mavrich Ari Minichse Chaveru. Look, just like, if there was it's like a guy who chases away a lion from his friend's property. Like, okay, thank you very much, but I don't owe you any money. Umashinenis nami lo mishalim, and therefore I might think that, okay, here also, it's protecting the sheep with his stalks. So maybe the owner of the sheep is not responsible to pay the owner of the stalks anything. Kamash malon. Therefore, it is teaching that the owner of the sheep does have to pay for the stalks upon which the sheep broke its fall. Wait, but maybe Al-Taka say that's a good metaphor. It's a good analogy. That just like if somebody chases away a lion from his friend's field, his friend doesn't owe him anything. So here also, just like the owner of the field kind of prevented damage to the sheep by his stalks breaking the fall, maybe the owner of the sheep does not owe the owner of the field anything for that. No. Look, a person who's chasing a lion away from his friend's property, it's his choice to do it. And so therefore the person whose property was saved, he's very appreciative, but he doesn't have to pay the chaser of the lion because the chaser of the lion did it on his own volition. Hi, lab midaito. But here, it wasn't, the sheep fell on the stalks. It wasn't, the owner of the field didn't specifically go out of his way to help out, with his own choice. The sheep pushed fell on it. Also, somebody who chases a lion away from his friend's property, he didn't lose any money during that process. But here, by breaking the fall of the sheep, his stalks got squished into the ground and he lost money. So he deserves to get paid back. So therefore, we're saying that the owner of the field does in fact deserve to get paid back, not just for what the animal ate, but also for what the animal squished. I'm going to drink more coffee. Coffee is a good thing. Any coffee drinkers in Babylon, Talmud? Alright. Heichi nafla. Now, what were the circumstances in which the sheep fell on the into this field? Rav Kana meshuchel kab mimer agleo. Interesting. Rav Kana says it slipped on its own pish. Rav Omer says Rava shedachafta chaverta, whereas Rava said that his friend pushed it into the field. Okay. Mad Omer shedachafta chaverta koshken shuchelka b'mei ragleo. So the opinion who says that where am I? So the opinion that says right, because we said that if it falls into the field, then he's pot, right? What did the Mishnah say? The Mishnah had said, right, nafal gir venenes mishlemes mashenenes yarda kidarka vizika mishlemes mashezika, right? That if it kind of fell beones, so then he only pays mashenenes, not mashezika. Mashezika is more expensive, right? The damages, if it was expensive, then he has to pay a lot of money. But the benefit is just the fact that he saved the meal. So he pays back for a cheap meal, but he doesn't pay exactly what was damaged. So this leniency is only when it was ones, but not if it was, if it went down on its own because the owner of the sheep was irresponsible. So what's considered this ones? So if Kana said that it slipped on its own pish, whereas Rava says that its friend pushed it. So the opinion who says that it would even be considered ones if it got pushed by another sheep. So certainly then if it slipped on its own pish, which is less predictable and more onesy, so then it will certainly be chayv. But the opinion who says that only if it slips on its own pish is it considered ones. But if its friend pushed it, so then pasha, then the owner of the sheep is negligent, and in that case the owner of the sheep will have to pay for the damages, because the owner of the field says, you should have had them walk in single file, because you should have known that if they walk next to each other, they might get pushy. Okay, Rav Kahana says Rav Kahana that when we talk about mashenenes, it's only within the initial furrow. But if it goes from one furrow to the next, then you have to pay for the damage, not just for the benefit. Rabbi Yochanan Omar says, even from one furrow to the next, and even all day long, you're only going to pay mashenenes until it leaves the field and then comes back with the owner not really taking any precautions to prevent it from coming back. Papa says, don't say that until it leaves the field with the owner of the sheep's knowledge and then comes back without the owner of the sheep really doing anything to prevent it. Once it leaves the field, even if then the owner the owner of the sheep locked up his sheep holding thing to prevent it from leaving, if it gets out and it returns to that field, still the owner of the sheep is going to be chayiv. My time I'll come to Amr, because the owner of the field is going to say, Kim the Yalfa, because once already the sheep left one time and came to the field and ate from the field, it's always going to try and come back. And if it gets out, it's going to come back to my field. And therefore, at that point, the owner of the sheep has to be extremely careful. And if the sheep gets out and returns to the field and damages, the owner of the sheep is going to be chayiv, even if he had closed the door to the sheep holding thing. Still he'll be chayiv, because the sheep is now accustomed to going back to this place and eating from his stuff. L'chaim. All right, let's go weiter. Okay, fine. So if it goes down on its own and it damages, so then if it goes down normally, not by onus, so then he pays that which is damaged. By Reb Yirmiyah Asakasha Yod Kedarka. Okay, so if it goes down, just in a regular way, it didn't fall down, it just sauntered over to this field and started fressing. But then it gives birth, and all the birth fluids all makes the whole area where it gives birth all. The people aren't going to want to buy the produce. The people, they like produce that looks perfect, and they don't want to get produce that has birth fluids on it. So Be'etzim he ruins. So Be'etzim the animal ruins the produce with the birth fluids. So again, by Rabbi Yirmiyah Yardi Kedarka, if it kind of sauntered over to the field, okay, but then ended up causing damage not by eating or anything like that, but by giving birth on the produce. So okay, so according to the opinion, it says that if it started out with negligence, right, that the owner of the sheep was negligent, he allowed for a situation where the sheep could just saunter over to this person's field. So he started off being negligent. For sofa bonus, but at the end, what ended up causing the damage was not his negligence, but it gave birth. Kind of a random scenario. So if you say that tchilas b'pshia v'sof bonus is chayev, lo tibaylach, there's no kasha. Well, then obviously you're chayev. Ki tibaylach, the shaila is aliba demand omer tchilas b'pshia v'sof bonus potter. If you say that tchilas b'pshia v'sof bonus is potter, what's the halacha in this case? Mi aminan kevin tchilas b'pshia v'sof bonus potter. Wait, what? Mi aminan kevin tchilas b'pshia v'sof bonus potter. Okay, do we say that since it started out as pshia, but in the end it was onus that it randomly gave, well, I don't know, it gave birth, and the assumption is that that's unexpected, so then potter, or dilma, or perhaps, look, hacha kula b'pshia, t'chevin d'kachazi d'krevela l'meila d'boyle l'nature, u'l'stamuri b'gava, right? Or maybe this is just entirely poshea, entirely negligent, because clearly he knows that the animal is pregnant. So because he knows that the animal is pregnant, he should have been more careful, because, if it saunters out to some place, it may end up giving birth over there. So therefore maybe it's entirely negligent. Teku, we say, we said, how do we evaluate the damage? So we say we compare a ruga, like a row of stuff, within a base saw. So how do we know that we basically we don't just evaluate straight up what was damaged, we evaluate the damage relative to a larger field. Okay, how much would this be in the context of a larger field? Because when you buy wholesale, it's cheaper than retail. So if we would only look at the damage, it would be more expensive. But if we look at the damage in terms of like a larger field, and what would be the value of that larger field, and then what would be this value relative to the value of the larger field, it would be a smaller amount. Okay, so how do we know that we evaluate the value of what was damaged relative to the field? So Rav Masna says, because the pasuk says uvir b'stei acher, that it eats b'stei acher, mlam cheshomen al gav stei acher, that when we evaluate the value of what was eaten, it is relative to a larger field. Hayu uvir b'stei acher miboyle lafugi rishus harabim. 1 second, when it says uvir b'stei acher, that's to exclude rishus harabim. Right? We had learned about shein, since the early days of BavaKama, and that vir b'stei acher, that you're only chayev if it's b'stei acher, if it's b'rishus anizak, right? You're only chayev for shein b'rishus hayochid, not right b'rishus harabim. You're potter for shein b'rishus harabim. So imkein lichtav rachmano uvir b'stei chavero. Look, if it was only to teach to exclude rishus harabim, so then I would say uvir b'stei chavero, that the animal ate in his friend's field. Inami stei acher, or different field, my bistei acher. What's bistei acher? Sheshom agav. So the acher, it means that it's evaluated relative to another field. Okay, so it's teaching, yes, to the exclusion of rishus harabim, but also that when evaluating the damage is relative to a larger field. Also, maybe I'll say it's entirely. Maybe this pasuk is entirely teaching that the damage is evaluated relative to another field, and therefore, if that's the case, then how do we know that shein is only chayiv b'rishus hayochid and excluded and potter b'rishus harabim? Imkein lichtaber rachmana gabe tashlumin. Look, if it was only coming to teach that the damage is evaluated relative to another field, to a larger field, so then it should have been written in the context of payments, right? But then that would be purely a payment thing. How do we evaluate damage for payment purposes? So it should be written in the context of payment, but it's not written in the context of payment. Where if that were the case, it should have said meitav sadeu, meitav kaimu yishalim, that you have to pay from your best stuff bistei acher, and it's evaluated relative to another field. Normally the kasver rachmana gabi uvir. Why is it davka written in the context of the actual shein, of the actual damage that was done? Shmamina tarte, it means that it's teaching two things: that the place of the damage is bistei acher, is to exclusion of rishus harabim, it's davka rishus hayochid, and oichid, it's evaluated relative to another field. And chevre, that is daf nun ches of Masechta BavaKama. Well, the truth is, it's not the whole daf nun ches, because we still have a lot to do on nun ches, let's be honest. But the thing is, if we start over here, it doesn't really end for a while, and we'll just do it all together, which means that tomorrow's going to be a big daf, chevre. Tomorrow's going to be a big daf, but today's a little daf. So that's daf nun ches of Masechta BavaKama. Peace out.